Hello. How are you
Hi,
today?
good. How are you?
Good. How are you?
My name's Nicole. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. My name is Nicole Marciuli. I will be your counselor for this session and going forward. So a couple of things I wanted to go over first that are important to me. I just want you to know this is a safe space.
Thank you.
Anything that you wish to talk about or bring to the sessions stays between us. Getting into that, I would like to bring up confidentiality. The confidentiality is that whatever we talk about will stay between us.
Great.
Unless you are going to harm yourself, someone else, or someone is trying to harm you. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
All right, great. 'Cause
Thank you.
If that does arise, I will have to disclose that information, or else I could be held reliable, and I, of course,
Okay.
don't want you to be hurt or someone
Okay.
else. Okay?
I understand.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So, what brought you in today?
Well, 5 years ago, my dad had passed away. And at the time that he was very ill, I had had some surgery myself. I had to have a hip replacement from a car accident from years earlier. And my dad was diagnosed with kidney cancer 2 years prior, and he had gotten his kidney removed, but then it had metastasized to his liver, and he had become very, very ill from that whole procedure. So I really never dealt with it. I guess the fact that I was taking care of him for the last few months of his life, and that he had actually passed away in my apartment, in my bedroom that I had given him for the time being that he was ill, because he was the most comfortable in my bedroom. It had a bathroom, it was large space, and I had round-the-clock nursing care and hospice that had come in to help me, but I was trying to care for myself at the same time with getting over surgery. So it was just a really difficult time in my life, and I never really was able to deal with it. I never saw it like therapy before.
Wow, that's hard. You to go through that. I'm very sorry to hear about the loss of your father.
Thank you.
So when was he diagnosed?
He was diagnosed 2 years before he had passed. It was 2009, and he actually told my sister and I, after my cousin had gotten married, he didn't want to tell us at the wedding, but he had just found out. So he had gotten diagnosed shortly before she got married and told us the day after she got married. So it was 2 years prior to him passing that he was diagnosed with it.
Wow. Okay. So tell me more about when you took care of your father. What kind of responsibilities did that entail?
Well, it was really hard because I feel like he deteriorated so fast, so quickly. And he was actually, this is kind of like a long story going back, but he was involved. He was with a girl for 12 years. They weren't married, but they were engaged, and he was living with her.
Okay.
And because of her own experiences, she had lost her husband before she had met my dad. So she was a widow when my dad and her met. And because she lost her husband, she couldn't deal with the fact that my dad got sick. She was a real pain in the butt and like not a very nice person. So she couldn't deal with the fact that he was ill. So she kind of like put it on my sister and I to take care of him as the responsibility. So he first went to his brother's house, and then he ended up going to my sister's house in Pennsylvania where she could watch him. But because my sister has kids and dogs, and it was like kind of a zoo, I had a quieter space at an apartment, so he decided to come up to stay with me, which was, I guess, late September, early October. And taking care of him was very difficult because, like I said, I was trying to take care of myself. I had to go to physical therapy. I still had a lot of doctor's appointments from the hip surgery that I had had in September. But it was hard because he deteriorated so fast. He had lost a lot of weight. I had to constantly give him medication. I had to constantly watch him all the time because he didn't have the energy. His body was like falling apart. So he would stand up and he would fall. So I really had to be careful. He couldn't go to the bathroom. He couldn't shower. So it was very tough on me to try to take care of myself and then take care of issues with him feeling the way he was feeling. And it got to a point where I had to call in extra people to help me because I couldn't do it on my own.
Okay. So it sounded like you were taking on a lot at the time, and you were feeling overwhelmed by this, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the girlfriend at the time show, after she found out that, you know, your father was diagnosed, so she kind of just put it on you guys, so she left?
She didn't leave completely because she would come to my apartment and visit him.
Yes.
But at that point, after seeing how she behaved in that situation with my father and how she really didn't care about anybody but herself, I distanced myself. I would allow her to come visit him, but she would literally come in my apartment, go to where he was in my bedroom, and close the door, and I really never saw her. They would visit each other privately, and then she would leave, and there was very few words exchanged during that time because I was really angry at the way she acted. To not allow him, they shared a house together.
Yeah.
So to not allow him to be in his own home, like she almost like kicked him out when he was like weak, just because she didn't want to deal with the fact that another person in her life, somebody that she was very close to, was sick and gonna eventually die.
Yeah.
So she was, it was really difficult on that end. And she wasn't very helpful to me with anything that was going on. Meanwhile, again, I had just had surgery, so I myself was like walking with a cane, I had a walker, I had like all these things. So it was difficult for me I had a roommate, thank God at the time, because she really did help me a lot with that.
Wow. That sounds hard.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
Very hard. Now, at this point, going forward, with your surgery at the time, what was that like for you to have to take care of your father while also trying to recover? Exactly.
Well, it was hard because I can remember I used to have to go to physical therapy at least 3 times a week after I was recovering. So the time my dad started coming to live with me, I had just started to walk on my own a little bit more with a cane, but I still was going to physical therapy, which was only like about 5 minutes from my house, which was great. But I would go to physical therapy and say I would like be on the treadmill because, you know, they do different exercises with you. I would get a call from my dad, like, where are you? Can you come home? Because he didn't want to be alone. He almost like resorted back to like like being a child. He was so dependent on things. If he needed something, I would have to run out and get it. So physically, it was difficult because I was in a lot of pain from not really taking care of myself properly like I should have. And to this day, I think I didn't do enough with my hip, so I actually still have pain from it because I didn't take care of it, I think, the way I should in the recovery process. Properly. So it was hard. It was like taking care of myself and then taking care of this, you know, my dad was 65, like the 65-year-old child. So it was very hard. It was very trying for me.
Now, do you think that you did a good job?
I think I did the best I could to help him. I did have, you know, my dad's brother was there helping me as much as he could. My sister would help me as much as she could. I had a very good friend of mine that would come up frequently to help me take care of him. At the time, I'm not sure if I was doing the best I could do, but looking back, I think he was happy that he was in my place. I think he was very comfortable, so that makes me feel better.
That's good. I think that's great that, you know, you gave him the proper care that you felt best for him.
Right.
And I also think that you should really, you know, pat yourself on the back.
Thank you.
Sounds like, I know we just met, but it sounds like you seem like you, of course, cared for your father. You actually put your life on hold for your father to cater to him.
Right.
You know, like any daughter would.
Thank you.
And I think that you should definitely give yourself more credit.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What are, you know, I want to do a small little activity, and this is just instead of focusing on the negatives, this is more of a positive.
Okay.
And what are 3 things that either remind you of your father, or 3 things that maybe you did with your father that you remember that are positives, like good memories that you can remember him by?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of memories of my dad. Mostly his sense of humor. He was a very funny person.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember my parents are divorced, so as a young girl, my dad would take my sister and I every weekend, and it was fun because he had a pool and he had a lot of things. He lived in a townhouse development, so there was a lot of kids around, so we would play a lot at his house. So I have memories of that, memories of him taking my sister on vacations. We went to Puerto Rico. He took us to Canada to see like Niagara Falls. He loves sports, so I remember going to Yankee games with him and different things like that. So, which is, it's great to have those memories of him.
Absolutely. Sounds like he was a great dad, and you
He
guys
was.
did a lot of fun things together.
He
Those are
was.
some great memories. And sometimes I feel that maybe if you're feeling down, you can even keep a journal or write down a couple of things that remind you about your dad, positives. Even
a
though
good idea.
it was a hard time that you went through, and I praise you for staying strong for your father.
Thank you.
I think that, of course, he will always be here with you, and, it's not easy for you to talk about with anybody.
I know, and even like 5 years later, it's still almost like it happened yesterday to me. I can't believe it'll be like 6 years in November. And another hard thing, I think, going back to when he had passed, it was right after Thanksgiving.
Of course.
So like any time like that holiday comes along, I'm just kind of like, I get down, I get depressed, I don't love to like be around a lot of people. So yeah, it's hard.
So
It's hard.
during this holiday, do you not spend any time with your siblings or your family?
I do. I usually will go, depending on who has it. My sister also often has holidays and things like that at her house. Sometimes I go to my dad's brother's. If I go to my dad's brother's, I get like a little bit more upset because I'm so used to seeing my father there, especially because it's his brother. But I just try to take it, one day at a time, as much as I can. I actually just recently thought of getting, my sister just got a tattoo of my dad, like a heart with his signature and like the dates, like his birthday and the date he had passed away. So I was thinking of doing something like that just to remember him.
I think that'd be a
My
great
mom would be
idea.
like, don't do it. She hates tattoos, but
You're a grown
Whatever.
woman, and if there's something that
yeah,
means something to you,
right.
and I'm not one to judge, and I have tattoos myself, and I think that if they have meaning behind them and they're important to you and they symbolize something, then I think it's actually a good way to express yourself, because it's on your body for the rest of your life,
Right.
and it's something you can always look at to remind you, and it doesn't have to be in a negative way. It could be like, I love my dad.
Yeah.
It's a positive.
Right.
He was a good
Exactly. That's
man.
how I look at it.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you, is there any kind of ritual, and by ritual I mean, is there, a day, whether it's his birthday or the day that he passed, or anything that you guys or you yourself do with your family or your friends to kind of remember him?
Not really. I know that my sister was talking about, my dad used to skydive. He loved to skydive.
Oh, wow.
So she had talked about we should do that on his birthday one year. But I'm so scared to do that, so I don't know. But I would definitely like to come up with something that we could both do, like especially with my sister, because it was just the two of us, and it would be nice to celebrate him somehow.
Yeah.
But skydiving, yeah, he's gone a few times and he loved it. So I thought if I could get the nerve to do that, that would be like awesome, And he also like loved. He was cremated, my father, and he loved to play golf. He loved to play golf like all over the country, and he's played in different countries. So my sister and I were like thinking maybe we should like spread his ashes like across the golf course.
No.
I don't know if that's like creepy.
I think that's something that you guys both discussed and thought about. These are things that
Right.
your father loved to do and that remind you of your father.
Exactly.
So if that's something that is going to give you peace of mind, then I think that might be beneficial.
Yeah. Thanks.
Of course. I really think that this hard time will always be a part of you and something that you will, I don't want to say never get over. It's always going to be resonating with you. But in here, we want to keep things positive and a positive outlook in life. We don't want you to feel down or you know, think that you didn't do a good job when it seems that you really did.
Thank you.
I really think that you should definitely give yourself credit. I know you say you do, but it's not easy. People don't.
No, it's hard to like think, you know, because when he had passed and he was so sick, we had I told you we had the hospice nurse come in, and she had to give, they call it an emergency pact in case, like, you know, he gets too sick or he's in pain, so you kind of assist him in, like, the process. So that was probably the hardest part for me, because he had a conversation privately with my sister and myself a few days before Thanksgiving, and he said, I think it's time that you start giving me, which was morphine. So, because he was in pain and his breathing slowed down. And so I think holding that for the longest time, I was like, I assisted him in like ending his life and like, how could I do that? But then like a part of me is like, but that's what you should have done, because he was in pain and he wasn't getting any better. And, you know, it was just like, if I didn't do that, it would have been prolonging something. And I think he was just ready to go himself. So I had to kind of honor that with him.
That's definitely hard for any person to make that decision. Do you still feel guilty in a sense?
Not anymore. I think I did right after it happened, and I would talk to, like I said, I never went to a therapist, but I would talk to friends about it, and everybody, you know, obviously it was like, no, you know, that's not what happens. Like, you had to do it because he was in pain, he wasn't doing well, but it's just that conversation about it, and, you know, that father-daughter, like, you know, he was crying and I was crying, and it was just like a really bad time. But I know that he's better off, you know, not being in that situation, because he got to a point where I just didn't even recognize. I mean, he lost so much weight. He didn't remember things that a normal person would remember. He was very forgetful. Sometimes he would be talking to somebody, but nobody was there. So I'm like, is he talking to like my grandmother who had passed, his mother? Like, I never knew like what he was like, because he kind of like, it totally took like his brain into something, like, I don't know how to explain it, but like, he, like I said, resorted back to being like a child, not really being himself. And that was hard. That was probably the hardest thing to say, is that he was so dependent on everybody else, because that wasn't the way he was his whole life. So
yeah, it sounds like that part of this whole process, not even almost taking care of him and, you know, trying to take care of yourself, but watching your parent who you love kind of depend on you, like you said.
Right.
I think that's...
It's like the roles were reversed. Like, my whole life I depended on him and would ask him advice and questions about something. If I had trouble with something, he was always there. Now it was like me. You know, he needed me. And it was just a weird feeling. And I had never been in that position before, where hospice was coming in, and nurses and social workers, and we had to deal with my dad's finances, and it was just like such a weird time for me.
Sounds like you had to take on a lot at once, and thankfully you had your sibling to help.
Because I thought about that. I was like, what if I was an only child, which so many people are, and they deal with this by themselves? You are? Yeah. See, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And my mom is like an only child, so I think she and I were like talking about that. Like, oh my gosh, like doing it on your own is really a trying thing to go through. So, yeah.
It's nice that you had a support system, especially even after the passing of your father. It sounds like, even though you didn't see a therapist, maybe that wasn't the right timing for you. And of course, I'm glad you're here now, so we can always dive into these issues, or how you're feeling going now and going further.
Yeah.
I think it's good that you had people to talk to, like a support system, even if it was friends. It's still nice to.
Yeah, there was some really good
that.
people around me at the time, which was great, and it was so helpful.
Yeah.
It was really helpful. And I remember his funeral, which we had 2 weeks after his death, because we kind of wanted to do a celebratory ceremony, not so much a, like, everybody, you know, mourning. So we had my dad was Jewish, so we had it in a temple where, you know, he had been cremated. So there was, like, no casket or anything like that, but there was pictures of him, and there was he loved hats. He always wore, like, baseball caps, so we lined the pews, like, with caps, which was cute. And then we had friends and family just tell stories about him for, like, 2 hours, which was, like, really nice. But I remember going into the service and thinking, like, I had taken care of him for, like, the past couple of months, and I was so drained and, like, cried so heavily when he had passed that at this moment, like, people were coming up to me and, like, saying, oh, I'm sorry, and they don't know what to say, and I'm just kind of standing there, like, I had, like, no emotion about it. It was weird.
I think that's, in a way, you might not see it, but that's That's healthy that you felt that way. I think, like you said, because you were in the position that no one else there was besides your sibling, taking care of your father day by day when he was depending on you, and then that moment had finally come. I think it was a mixture of emotions. It sounds like even though you were devastated, you also were happy that he was at peace finally. Because you saw him.
It was like a relief. It was a relief from it. You're right.
And I think that because your life was kind of on hold and you were taking on so much, like you said, with the nurses, the hospice, the finances, you know, working with your family, I think that it all came together. And that was, I'm glad, it sounds nice that your family put that together for your father, that he should be remembered in that way. And I think at that time, maybe it was a lot for you to take in. And I think you had the grief, but also the happiness that your father was at peace, and this is what he would want.
Right, exactly.
100%.
I agree with you. Yeah. Because I remember moments where it was coming to the end and he was very, you know, sick, and we're like, any day, like, it's going to be, like, you never knew. I was like, is it going to be today? Is it going to be tomorrow? And I remember, like, thinking, oh, please, God, like, just take him, because he's in so much pain. Like, just take him out of his misery, you know? And then, like, when it happens, you're so almost, like, surprised but not surprised, and then it, like, you know, it just hits you so hard, but you want him, like, not to feel the way he was feeling for so long. It's like a very weird feeling, but
take that off of him. I think this is something that, of course, was out of your control, but you controlled it as much as you could, like a loving daughter that you are.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to kind of go a little deeper here. I know we said we're focusing on positives, but sometimes we need to get to the root of things. Now, this may be hard to disclose or talk about, so if you feel comfortable doing so, please. If not, you know, we don't have to. But what is maybe something that you're either negative, like harboring still today from that? Do you think you're a different person because you went through that?
I think I'm a different person. I think it's made me stronger as a person. I don't take things for granted as much because when you actually see, I mean, people die obviously every day, and people lose their parents, and, you know, worse things like losing their children, which must be like horrific. But I think the fact that it was such an experience in my home, the way it happened, it wasn't like in the hospital. I like wonder sometimes if he was in a hospital or a rehab facility, would I feel differently? But I think because it was in my house, in my bedroom, it hit me so hard. Like where I wouldn't, like I told you, he was in my bedroom when he had passed. So I wouldn't sleep in my room for like a good month and a half after he had passed. And I ended up moving because of that, because that he had died in my apartment, because I just couldn't like deal with it. So at the time, I don't know if I felt that it made me a better person, but like now I do. Like looking back on it, it's been almost 6 years that he has passed. So I definitely, I don't regret things as much anymore. about how things happened, me taking him in, me helping him basically die. Like, I don't harbor like all those negative feelings anymore. I feel like I did a good thing. I'm here today because I feel like I've never really talked about it to anybody professional. I've always kind of relied on my friends for that. And, you know, it's still a hard thing. It still like causes down moments. So I don't know if it's, you know, normal to feel that way, and I guess that's why I'm just here to vent out those feelings to you.
I'm glad you're here. And thank you for disclosing all this information to me.
Thank you.
Like I said, this is a safe space, and I want you to feel comfortable now and going forward. It sounds like, of course, you know, you will go through your highs and your lows, especially thinking of this experience that you went through with your father. This would be hard for you, for anybody. So this is completely normal that you're feeling this way, especially like you said around Thanksgiving. You know, you feel down, you don't want to be around anybody. Of course, you know, that's when your father passed away, and that's healthy and normal. I think it sounds like you've gotten to a point where you've accepted it. You know, there's different stages of grieving. There's denial, there's anger, and I'm sure maybe you went through a couple of different stages.
Definitely.
You were angry, like, why did this happen? I was in denial. This can't be real. This can't, you know, couldn't have happened. He didn't pass away in my apartment. And it sounds like you had, like I said, you had the great friends and family that you had to help you get through it. And like, I'm glad you're here now. It's good to talk about things, even though it was 6 years ago. This was a big thing that happened in your life. It's not just, you know, something minute. This is a big thing, and I think that it's healthy, and it sounds like you are very strong, and this is something that you overcame. It's not something you will ever leave behind you, because it will resonate with you, like we said earlier, but I think that, you know, you've come a long way.
Thank you.
And it sounds like you are very strong, and your father would be very proud of you.
Thank you.
Now, going forward, of course, we don't have to talk about, you know, something this deep in other sessions, but, you know, we can, of course, still dig deeper into this if you feel comfortable doing so.
Sure.
Now, for homework-wise, what is something that you think might be a good idea to assign you for this week? See a little about me in my sessions. I like to give homework and maybe ask the client something that they might like to do pertaining to our discussions each session. It's different usually.
I mean,
every
it's
week.
always nice. I could like start. I like writing, so I was thinking of maybe coming up with some like things I could do to celebrate my father, like we talked about.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And maybe draw out like something like a memorable thing I want to do for him, like the tattoo we were talking about. So maybe I could do something like that, or you know, just think about the happy times with him.
Yeah, I think.
And write it down like in a journal or something like that. I think that would be helpful to me.
Yeah, and then what I like about that is that it's your own private journal. If you feel you ever want to bring it in and we can read it and discuss it, absolutely. There might be some days you're feeling down, and we can, you know, talk about how you were feeling that day and maybe why or what made those emotions arise. But I think that would be healthy, and I think that would be great to do. It's a great homework assignment. Next week, if you're, you know, feeling up to it, I would love to meet again. Wednesday at 1 o'clock, same time.
That would be great.
That works for you and your
schedule? I'll put it in my schedule. I'll put it in my phone.
Great. And also, on the side note, I think what else you could maybe do is, like you said, that, you know, your father, when you were younger, loved to take you to the Yankee games and here and there. Maybe go with your family and your siblings. And I know you said you guys live kind of far apart, but maybe, or even with your friends, maybe you can do something every now and then to help you remember your father, of course, in a positive way, which is how we want to see him and remember him. So I think that'll all be beneficial.
That would be fun. Yeah, I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah. So once again, I just remind you about confidentiality. everything we discussed today will stay, and we will pick up next week where we
Okay.
left off.
Great.
And I look forward to seeing you
It
then.
was really nice meeting you.
It was nice to
Nicole.
meet you too,
Thank you
Nicole.
so much.
Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate it.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. We'll see you
Thanks.
next week.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye bye.